Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second part of Shravan Aras's webinar, which is today on using the wearables data that we had learned to manage and access last time. And he'll cover some analysis, visualization, and connecting to them all. So let's take care of some light housekeeping, and then Shravan will start. So first, a reminder about the date change for our next month's webinar on cacao. It's been pushed back 1 week to November 17th. Today's webinar might run a little long, depending on how active people are with questions. Shravan says it's okay for people to unmute and ask questions if they have, since he's going to be doing some hands-on stuff. Otherwise, please open your Zoom chat window and feel free to type questions in there that Shravan can address at the end. We are recording, and I'll be posting this video recording on our website later today. And so I am now pleased to reintroduce Shravan Aras, Assistant Director of Sensor Analysis and Smart Health Platforms at the University of Arizona Health Sciences Department. Shravan's research areas span across energy optimization for sensors, clinical imaging using machine learning techniques, graded authentication based on biometrics and biomedical algorithms for cardiovascular systems. And he has also been instrumental in advocating for the low-code, no-code initiative, giving clinicians and non-technical people the tools to develop sensor-based applications for distributed clinical data collection. So welcome, Shravan. Thanks for doing part 2 with us.
Thank you, Tina, for that amazing introduction as usual. So today is going to be more of like a hands-on session, and everybody knows that when it's hands-on, stuff can break. And so if that does happen, bear with me. We'll try to get things up and running as quickly as possible. But with that, let's get started. So today's agenda, and I'm going to quickly mute some of my other notifications. Okay, so today's agenda is to go over how we can use Apache Superset inside of CyVerse to start visualizing and analyzing some of the sensor data. To that extent, we'll look at how you connect to a data source, how you go ahead and launch the Superset app inside CyVerse, and then you look at how we can go ahead and analyze from that particular data source we have connected to. We'll go over a visualization workflow, and we'll work on hands-on with Fitbit data, designing queries, charts, and dashboards to explore some of that data set. We'll look at exporting and importing data dashboards, and then we'll look at collaborating and sharing analysis through CyVerse with other users in them. So last webinar, we talked about our data flow and how different components are connected together. And today I want to focus on just one of these pathways. So last webinar, we focused on connecting from CyVerse directly into my data hubs. Today, we'll focus on a flow where data from my data hubs is going directly into our AWS infrastructure. And then CyVerse is connecting to our AWS infrastructure through Apache Superset and Sensor Fabric libraries, and you're able to visualize that information. So with that, I'm going to move more towards our live demo that talks about how we can launch the CyVerse app and how we go ahead and add the data source into it. So I'm going to shift my screens now, and I'm going to shift, and you guys will be able to see my CyVerse screens right now. So just a quick thumbs up if everybody can see it, or anybody. Okay. All right, so this is your CyVerse screen once you log into CyVerse. And if you go and look at your public applications, I'm just going to go and look at my public apps here. You'll find an app called as Sensor Fabric Superset. And that's the app that we are going to focus on today for all of our analysis, as well as querying. So once I go click on that, you can keep all of this as default. There'll be 3 different fields that you'll be asked to fill right now. And so you'll be asked to fill your admin username, admin password, and a secret key. So if those who have worked with Superset before know that there is a login to connect to Superset. So you have a username and a password that is used to connect into Superset. So we can use that. So that's how you set that over here. You set that your admin username and admin password. I'm going to keep it really simple. Just go with admin, just because this is a test and this is still just running as a container inside CyVerse. Your secret key, this is the 48 character key that keeps your database data stored securely. And I like to generate it using OpenSSL's 48 key for OpenSSL's secret key generator. So I'm going to go ahead and just quickly copy paste that in here, and I can uh, walk you guys over the command as well. So if you guys go to, let me open up another CyVerse. I'll quickly log into it. Going to launch, and I'm going to open up CyVerse Cloud Shell that gives me access to an Ubuntu shell that I can run commands in. Okay, just gonna make sure OpenSSL is there, and there it is. And so the command I usually use is OpenSSL rand -base64 and then a 42 character key, and that key is going to be generated here. So I copy paste this key and I can put that back over here. One thing to remember is that when you guys share your analysis with other users inside CyVerse, it is important to also share these details with them. If you're on UA, you can use UA stash to securely share them. If you're outside the UA network, you can use any other means of securely sharing these credentials with your collaborators. Keep all of that as default. I'll go ahead and launch the analysis. And in a few minutes, the container will be up and running inside CyVerse, and Superset should be running with all the fields that we have just populated. All right, perfect. So once your container is up and running inside CyVerse and Superset is initiated, you'll see a login screen. You will put your same username and password that you added when you launched CyVerse. Oh, sorry, when you launched the Superset container inside CyVerse. So once you have done that, you can now go ahead and start seeing your Superset dashboards. But if you're doing this for the first time, you won't have anything on it. Just like right now, I don't really have anything on it. And so the first thing you will want to do is set up a data source to actually start pulling data from. And to be able to do that, you go into your settings and add a database connector. You go and click on add database and you see a variety of options here. This particular version of the Superset container already comes pre-installed with the Amazon Athena driver. So you can go ahead and connect to, go ahead and select that. And in the display name, you can go ahead and add whatever you want to be able to identify that. For now, I'm just gonna say demo dataset. And the next thing is you need something called as a SQL Alchemy URI. And I'm going to shift to the PowerPoint presentation for a minute so I can show you guys what the format of that should be. It's going to shift to this one. All right, so this is how your SQL Alchemy URL will look like. It starts off with a, oops, sorry. It starts off with your AWS key ID as well as your access key. And you should get that whenever you make your IAM account at AWS. If all of this sounds gibberish, please look at please check with the person who's managing your data inside AWS, and they'll give you access to these keys, and then you can go ahead and use those keys to get access to it. The region name is where the region on which your data is stored. For us, it's usually just US East 1. The schema name is a database name, and then the S3 staging directory is where you want Superset or Athena to store the results of your query. Your IAM account does need to have permissions to access all of this. There is a small caveat here. Superset has a limit of 1024 characters. And so right now we're not able to add things like session tokens, which are a lot longer. But we're working on modifying the Superset Python code to remove that so that we can add more longer URIs to it. So we're not exactly sure where that limitation is right now. So for now, you can only use your access key and your secret key for it. So I'm going to move to the browser again.
Shravan, there's a
Yeah.
request when you show your coding screens to enlarge it so that people can see it. Sometimes it's small and it's hard to see
Okay,
what you're pointing to if you could. Thank you.
you got it. We'll do that. Okay. So I am back to this particular screen now. So this is where you can go ahead and copy paste your URI in the way that I just showed you. So I'm going to go ahead and copy paste the URI right now. I'm just going to take us off screen share again, just so that I don't expose any keys. All right, so that's done. I know you guys can't see it right now, but I'm going to save this and going to go back into. So I have gone ahead and added the demo data set. I can actually go click on edit and you guys will see the SQL Alchemy URL that I used. Um, the secret key has now been masked as just XXXs. You can't really see that even if you go and edit, which means if you're sharing the Superset dashboard with other users, they won't actually get to see your key. I've gone ahead and added all the other portions to the URL, including the schema as well as the test bucket that the data is going to be stored into. You can go ahead and hit test connection. That will show you if the connection is good or not. And once the connection is good, you can proceed from there. Okay, perfect. So once you have connected to your database, um, there is a standard flow that I'm going to show today that you can follow to create your visualizations and analysis. So going back to the presentation, so you start off with a SQL query that connects to the database or the data source in this case. You create data sets from that SQL query, and then you create charts on top of that data set, and then dashboards are created on top of those particular charts. If someone is new to SQL query, I'll leave a link to one of the talks that Pal did with Data Labs, and I know Carlos is here as well, and he explores over the basics of SQL. We won't be covering SQL, though I'll be showing some of the queries. We won't really be covering the syntax or how to write those queries in this particular webinar. All right, so moving back into Superset. All right, and we're going to spend almost all of our time on this right now. We're not going to be switching any screens. So thank you for bearing with me on that one. Okay, so once you have your data set created, you can go ahead and start writing your first queries in your SQL lab. So when you open up SQL lab, on the left-hand side in schema, you'll see all the data sets that you have access to. So I'm going to pick one of our data sets. This was a collaboration at a group at UA. I don't really know if they're on the call right now, but I'm going to walk you guys using that data set as a demo. Once you click the data set, you get to see all the tables in that data set. And these are tables that are coming directly through my data hubs, and they have all of the Fitbit information inside them. So for example, let me go and look at Fitbit activity logs. And that has all the information, all the fields on Fitbit activity logs. One of the questions I think someone asked in the last webinar was, how do we know what the tables mean? And so we have created a GitHub repository. So if I go, sorry, and GitHub is not letting me log in properly right now. So let me just confirm. Let me go quickly to our organization repository. And so we do have a GitHub repository that has all the table names and the fields and a quick explanation of what they do. Links to this are at the last slide of the presentation, so you can click on that and read more about the tables, and that will give you an idea about what each of these tables are and what each of these fields are. That list is not fully complete yet. It's mostly all the fields that we have been using internally for our research, and as we add more fields to it, we can keep on updating that list. Okay, so this is the SQL dashboard where you can start entering your queries. And what I'm going to go ahead and do now is I have some queries which I've already prepared for us. And I'm going to go ahead and enter those queries here so we can start seeing how the results are changing. So we're going to focus on a use case where we are trying to build a summary dashboard to see the compliance of users. So we'll look at sleep summary, we'll look at activity summary, and we'll look at heart rate variability summary. So in order to look at sleep summary, I'm going to use this SQL command, SQL statement here. Um, I can quickly go over it, but these SQL statements, again, when you look at the last slide of the presentation, you'll see a GitHub link there, and they have all the SQL queries there. So you can go ahead and either copy paste it for your things or go and update them for however you need to use it. But over here, we are pulling data from the Fitbit sleep logs, and we are pulling data from a very specific time period, just so that we can keep it easy and clean right now to see it. And we are looking at the start date and end date from when the sleep log started and when the sleep logs ended. And we're also looking at how many actual days the data was recorded for. So if I go ahead and run this, uh, let me see. Oh, I'm going to zoom out a little bit since it's not easy for me to click on buttons when it's all zoomed in that much. So when I run that particular query, I see all the participants here and their start date and end date and the days of sleep that they have recorded along with just an average efficiency of their sleep. And this is just an example to show how you can use the SQL Explorer inside Superset to run your queries and get this summary data set, right? Once you have run the SQL query and got the data set, you can actually save it. So you can go ahead and save the data set. I'm just going to call it sleep summary. And you can go and click save and export. It's going to open up an exploration tab. I'm going to close it for now since we'll look at that later on. You can also go ahead and save your queries, and this is very helpful if you want to go and visit them again, or if you have multiple users who are using the same dashboard when you share the database file in CyVerse with them, they can go ahead and look at this as well. So I'm just going to save sleep summary query, and I'm going to go ahead and save that. We will do two more of these things, and I'm going to do that very quickly right now. I'm just copy pasting a summary query for activity as well. And because this video is recorded and posted, if you guys are watching it again, please feel free to pause it and look at it as well. So this is the activity. This is coming from the Fitbit daily data table. And that is essentially just showing you the start date and end date again of when they bought the device. It's showing you the average steps that the person took per day and the number of days recorded in the calendar days. And the reason we like to do this is it gives us an idea of compliance. So for example, this person had the device for 43 days, but they only bought the device for 27 days. We only have data from them for 27 days. So if you're a study coordinator and if you're looking at this every single day or every other day, you can catch users who are non-compliant in your study and go and reach out to them just by running these queries and creating these dashboards and looking at that. I'm going to go ahead and save this as well. Going to put the explore portion. And I'm going to go ahead and save this as a new query. So I'm going to go ahead and say activity, query, summary. I'm going to save as new. The last one, which I'm going to demo, is heart rate variability. Since I do know a lot of people are interested in that. This is the heart rate variability data coming out of Fitbit. And let me go run that. And the table we are using for this is again the Fitbit daily data. And Fitbit gives you two types of heart rate variability. It gives you a HRV daily RMSSD and a deep RMSSD. Daily is in the morning and deep is at night. And so we are looking at both of those. What we are looking at here with the summary data is just the daily average HRV for a participant and the deep average HRV for the participant. And we also looking at the max and the minimum values. Those who are looking at these queries might have seen that there are a bunch of zeros here. And that's because the minimum when they're not wearing it, the device just shows up as 0. So you can get rid of those by adding a where clause into it or just by adding a filter clause into it. We won't be looking at that right now, but you can use that in SQL to add that and remove those things out. So let's go ahead and save this. I'm going to save this as a HRV query or HRV summary query. And I'm going to also save this as a data set. I'm going to briefly pause here to see if anybody has any questions. I know it's only 11 of us right now on the call, so we can have questions back and forth. If somebody has any questions, I can just pause for a minute here. All right, looks like there are no questions, so we can proceed. So once you have created your SQL statements and the data sets connected to it, you can now go and start exploring those data sets. So if I go and click on data sets, I'll see the 3 data sets that I created using the SQL queries. You can go and edit the data sets, and it'll show you the SQL query that was used to create the data sets. And you can go ahead and change that if you want to change your data set. Do remember that all charts that are connected to this data set will also change as soon as you change your SQL query. So once you have your data sets, the next thing you want to do is to be able to create charts out of this. And so we are going to create 3 simple charts, one for each of these summary data sets. And we're just going to create tables to begin with. So you go into your charts menu and you click on charts, and you can go ahead and just click on table. And then you can go ahead and pick the data set that you want to create the charts on. So let's say, for example, we're going to go ahead and create a chart on the activity summary data set. So once you have that, we'll go ahead and click raw records because we don't want aggregated records right now. We just want to see everything. And we go and add everything right now. So participants, start date, end date, average steps, days recorded, as well as the calendar days. Once we have all of that, I can go ahead and click on create chart, and that will create all of the table for me. The next thing which I want to do here is maybe I want to go ahead and highlight those that have walked less than 10,000 steps on average per day. So I can go into customize, I can click on conditional formatting, and I can go ahead and pick the column I want. Right now I want average steps, so I go ahead and pick that. I can pick the color, and for the operator, I can go ahead and pick the conditional operator I want. So let's say I'm going to say less than, and the target value is 10,000, and I hit apply, and that will go ahead and highlight all of the participants who have less than 10,000 steps on average in this particular data set. I can go ahead and click on update table. Once I've done that, I can go and save this particular chart. I'll give it a name. I'm going to call it activity chart summary. I'm going to go ahead and save it. I'll quickly go and do this same thing for the HRV summary as well. So I'll go ahead and create a new chart, click on plus chart. I'll go ahead and pick a table. I will go at HRV summary as my data set, and I'll hit create a new chart. I'm going to look at only a few of these. So I go back to raw records, go into columns. I just want the start date, I want my end date, and maybe I just want the average daily HRV. And that's all I need. I'm going to go ahead and run it, and I can see my table being formed. I'm going to go ahead and save it. For HRV summary chart, and that has been saved. So now when I go into my charts, I will see these 2 different charts right here. And now I can create a dashboard that puts all of these charts together. So let's go ahead and do that. So I can go to dashboards. I can click on the plus dashboard sign. So this is going to happen sometimes when the container is running inside CyVerse. And the reason this happens, and I did want to show everybody this, is because the way redirections are working right now, it accidentally removes the base level URL. So if this happens, we just type in CyVerse.1 and it will work perfectly again. We haven't really fixed that yet, and we're again working on fixing that as well. So this is a new dashboard. I'm going to go ahead and name this dashboard as the summary. And you can start adding charts into this dashboard. So for example, you can add your activity chart right here. And you can go ahead and create a new row. You can go into layout elements, create a new row, and you can go and add your Charlie chart into this. And the beauty of this is that this data is being pulled directly from your data source. So if you imagine that flow which I showed you, every single day, data is being exported from my data hubs into our AWS infrastructure. And then at the similar time, you are able to pull that new data from the AWS infrastructure just by running the Athena queries. So what that means for you is that this will update every single day. So you don't have to do anything extra. If you just come and look at the dashboards again, you'll have an updated view of the dashboards at every time the data source is updated at the back as well. So I'll go ahead and hit save on this. And so my dashboard has now been saved. I'm going to go ahead and publish this dashboard. I'll talk a little bit about why I did that when I talk about sharing dashboards out with other users inside CyVerse. So once the dashboard has been created, you can see it over here. You can again go and open it, and you'll see there's a small delay. That's Superset actually trying to read all of the data from the data source, and it's going ahead and populating the data into your charts. So that concludes the first portion of what I wanted to show you with the flow of using queries, of using data sets and charts, and then creating a dashboard. We are going to dive a little bit deeper into time series charts and time series graphs for Fitbit data after this. I also want to pause for a minute to see if anybody has questions on what we just talked about so far. Yes,
Shravan,
Megan, the dashboards can be created by participants for multiple variables. And we can also combine multiple tables into a single data set. So for example, if you have the activity table, or let's say you're doing aura data, and if you have sleep table, and if you have IBI or temperature table, you can combine all of those together using join statements in SQL, and then create a single data set. And you can have charts that compare all three of them together. I do have one example later on in the study, later on in this webinar, sorry, that's going to show combining the activity and the sleep data set together. Okay. So I'm going to start diving into a example that looks at sleep data now and time series graphs and how you can create them on top of it. So we'll start by doing our exact same procedure. We'll go ahead and start with queries. So you always start with queries to create data set. So let's go ahead and copy paste a query which I already have prepared here. And we're going to start looking at sleep efficiency coming from Fitbit data. So I'm going to go ahead and look at this. You can also explore all of your data just by going ahead and clicking here. So for example, I want to explore what Fitbit sleep logs has. I can go ahead and click there. It'll show me all the variables that that the table has. And you can look at a preview of all those variables. And this is really, really good if you're unfamiliar with your data set that's coming in from these devices. So you can spend some time trying to look at what each of these tables are, what each of these fields are, and what the values inside those fields are. There are a few things to be mindful about, and those are data types. So for example, in this case, efficiency is a variable car or a var car data set. And I end up converting that as an integer just so it makes it easy for analysis in the future. But it's just worth being mindful about the data types of these variables and then changing those data types and casting them as needed. The other thing I want to point out is this limiter over here. So this is a limiter that limits how many records are shown here. And what it basically does is just goes into SQL and adds this for you. So it adds a limit condition to the query so that you're not seeing all of the data set. And I like doing that when I'm looking and just testing these things out. So I'm not waiting for a large period of time for all of the data to be downloaded and for me to view it. So this is a sleep table. And what we'll see here is that some people, if I can find it, I may not be able to find it clearly. So for example, let's see. Unfortunately, can't find it right now, but that's fine. Some people might have daily naps, right? So they might sleep in the daytime as well as they might sleep in the nighttime. And so let's say you only want to focus on nighttime sleeps. And so we have a query that I've already prepared for that. I'm going to copy paste it here. And oops, sorry. Copy paste doesn't want to cooperate with me today. But here's the query that we are looking at just to get nighttime sleep. And the way we do it is we just take the date on which they slept. We take the hour part of the hour part of the date, and we constrain it between 20 and 3, and we just use an or clause because the hour clock becomes 0 after 23 and it starts up back again. So just be mindful about that. I wanted to show this particular example. Oops, let me see what's going on there. All right, there you go. So now what we are seeing is we are seeing the participant identifier, we are seeing the day when their sleep session started, and we're just seeing the efficiency associated with it. And we're only going to see their nighttime sleep. So we're not interested in their nap time during the day. Once we have that, we are going to look at both duration and efficiency from this data set. So let me again copy paste a different SQL query. And this time I'm going to make a new tab. And the advantage of making a new tabs is you can actually keep multiple queries open and you can go back and forth to look at different analysis results that come from these queries. I'll go ahead and paste that here. And so we're going to be showing the efficiency of the sleep, the average efficiency that's coming through it, and then we're also showing the duration. So efficiency is essentially a percentage of how much they were asleep versus how much they were awake. So if you have a lower efficiency and the person was twisting in bed and was awake as compared to someone who has a higher sleep efficiency as the data is coming in from Fitbit. So now that we have this, I'm going to go ahead and save this as a data set. So let's go ahead and save this as a data set. I'm going to call it sleep night. I'm going to go ahead and click on it. And so I'm again going to get out of the exploration option, but I'm going to create a chart on it, and I'm going to create a time series chart because I want to look at how people's sleep patterns change throughout the study. And so if you had an intervention that targeted sleep in some form or the other, a graph like this will be useful for you to know if the intervention is having any effect. Even before you go into your rigorous numerical analysis, you can visually look at that and see if there are any differences. So if I go back to my data set, I see a new data set here, which is sleep night. I go into my chart and I can go ahead and create a new chart. So I'm going to create a time series chart right now, which is right here. You can also go ahead and search for these, by the way. So you can go ahead and search for a time series chart, or you can pick from a plethora of charts on the left-hand side. And they range from scatter plots to calendar plots to word plots to 3D map plots and all of those different things. So I'm going to go ahead and pick time series chart, and I'm going to go and pick sleep night. Let's go ahead and create a new chart based on that information. All right, so you will have your empty chart screen right now, and you can start adding metrics to it. So right now, I'm only interested in looking at sleep efficiency as a metric, so I'll drag that in there. The aggregation is because you're looking at multiple participants. How do you want to aggregate them together? So I'm just going to say by average, and it's going to aggregate by average through multiple participants when you're seeing that single efficiency graph for all participants. So let's go ahead and do that. It automatically picks up the date column range or the column which has the date time for you. You can go ahead and pick another one. So if your data set had multiple columns whose data type was date time, you can go and pick whichever you want to. The time grain essentially is how you want to aggregate them. So right now I'm just doing it by day. It doesn't really have effect for our data set, but for example, you had temperature data coming in from Aura. That data is coming every single minute. And if you want to do an aggregation per day for that data, you can use this time field to do that. Or if you want to look at it per minute as it's coming, you could do minute or you could do hours. That's where the time grain aggregation comes in play. We have everything set here. I'm going to go ahead and create a chart and see if that works. All right, there you go. So this is essentially showing you the aggregated average efficiency of sleep across all the participants. So maybe if you had an intervention every other week, perhaps you could see a population increase in efficiency of sleep or decrease in efficiency of sleep. That's being too idle right now, but that's for example, I'm mentioning that. However, what if you wanted to see for each and every participant, how does the sleep change? So you can look at outliers to see if there are participants who are not showing the same trend as the population, right? And so what you can go ahead and do is you can use something called as dimension, and dimension splits the data up into multiple dimensions. And you can pick what column you want to use for that. So I'm going to go ahead and say participant identifier is a column I want to use for dimensions. I'm going to go ahead and update the chart. And this is going to be very busy now. You can see a lot of stuff on it. And so what this did was it plotted sleep efficiency for each and every participant separately. And something really nice happens here is I'm able to see a participant whose sleep efficiency is very low as compared to her peers, right? And if your study is interested in that, you can go ahead and look at something like that and see why that's possibly happening. We won't get into details about that right now. So I can go ahead and save this data set or save this chart, sorry. I'm going to call it sleep night chart, and I'm going to hit save. And the reason I'm saving this is I'm going to create a dashboard with all the sleep metrics together. And I'm going to show everyone how you can use filter options to filter between participants and only see data for that particular participant. All right, so once we have done that, I'm going to go back into my charts, make sure that the chart has been created. It has been created right here. And I'm going to go on to the next portion of this, which is now looking at sleep and activity together. So we're going to look at two different tables. One of them is going to be the Fitbit sleep log table, and the other table is going to be your daily data, Fitbit daily data table, and see how we can combine those two together in a single data set. Again, I'm going to take like a minute of pause here. Since there's a lot that I'm showing to see if we have any questions. All right, going to go ahead and close all of these up. And I'm going to start off with our next one, where we're looking at activity and sleep together. So let's start off by looking at just the activity. And I'm going to focus on active calories in this situation. So I'm going to go ahead and copy paste, also paste a particular query. I'm going to go and run it. And what this query is doing is that it's going and looking at the Fitbit daily data table. You can go and look at that table right here. And it's pulling the activity calories from it. So those are the calories burned by the individual when he or she is doing a particular activity. And those are just being pulled up over here. So once we have that, let's also run a query that looks at sleep. So let's say hypothetically you wanted to have a study that looks at sleep efficiency and activity. So the hypothesis is that if they're burning more calories, maybe their sleep efficiency is low. I'm just making this up. That could be the hypothesis, and that's what we're trying to build as a story with this example analysis. So with the SQL query, you can see the activity calories that they have burnt. And I'm going to write another SQL query now that does the same thing, summary statistics for sleep. And it's pulling that from the Fitbit sleep log table. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so this is very similar to what you guys saw before. So it has the PID, it has the date, and it has the sleep efficiency score for the individual. One thing which I had to do here is because we are going to be joining these data sets or joining these tables together, but we are joining them on two things. We're joining them on the participant ID and we are joining them on the date. I created this new composite column called which is a PID and date together. So you can see that this person, the PID is on the front and the date is at the next portion. And the same thing over here. And the reason for doing that is now I can create a join that references both a composite of both these columns together. And so we'll look at that next. So I'm going to again paste a query which I've already written. And all of these queries are available on GitHub if you want to go back and study how they have been written. And so what this query is doing is using the subquery from the first tab, is using the subquery from the second tab right here, and it's creating a join between both of those queries. And you can see here that using the composite PID column that had both the actual PID and the dates, we are now able to create a join based on a particular day as well as the particular PID. So what that will do is it'll get data from both the activity table as well as the sleep table and align them together for the exact same date for the exact same participant. Let's go ahead and run this. And once we run this, I can see the PID plus the date, the composite PID, the date at which I'm looking at, the sleep efficiency, and the active calories burnt during that particular day. And you can use this template to join as many tables as you want. So let's say you also want to go ahead and look at intraday heart rate. So for projects which have intraday heart rate enabled through My Data Hubs, you can go ahead and maybe look at aggregate statistics for the intraday heart rate. So for example, what was my maximum heart rate for every hour of the day, and also have that as an array joined in this particular table. I'm going to clean this up a little bit so it's a little easier to see. I'm going to paste another query which I wrote yesterday to clean this up. And all that this query is doing is that it's going ahead and just re-extracting the participant ID correctly from the composite participant ID. So if you remember previously, you had the participant ID, then you had code, and then you had the date. This one's just extracting it all again and making it in a way you can easily read it. So once I have this, I'm going to go ahead and save this data set. And I'm going to call this sleep and activity. And I'm going to go ahead and exit out of the Explorer. We'll go and make a chart manually on the data set. All right, so I'm going to go back into datasets, and now I see my dataset, which is sleep and activity. I can go ahead and create a chart around it. So I go ahead and click on chart. I click on charts again. Now I'm going to use a new chart, which is called as a mixed time series chart because I have two different time series objects. So I'm going to go and click on mixed time series charts, and I'm going to pick the data set which I've just created, which is your sleep and activity. It's a little tricky when you're combining multiple tables. You have to do that at the SQL level and data set level. You can't really have more than one data set for a chart. So unfortunately, that's the limitation right now from Superset, is that if you're using a chart, all data must come from the same data set, but you can use your SQL queries to create data set however you want to be able to do that visualization. So I go ahead and click on create new chart. And now I can start adding things into it. So with a mixed time series chart, I see two query options. So I see query A and I see query B right here. So I can go ahead, and for query A, I'm going to look at efficiency. Again, we're going to look at average aggregate across all the participants. I'm going to go and look at, for query B, I'm going to go and look at activity calories. Again, I'm going to look at average aggregation across all participants. So let's just keep it at that and see how it works right now. It should have automatically filled in. It didn't. So let me just go ahead and, okay, I see what's going on. So let's go back to, this is an unexpected, I wasn't expecting this, but this is good to see what's going on here. So we are the live debugging portion of what's happening now. Okay, so my best guess is what's happening is that the date field here is just a variable character and not an actual date time field. And we can actually verify that by saying type of, and it'll tell me what the data type of this particular field is. And as I was suspecting, this is a variable character and not a date type. And because of that, what happened is that when you were creating a time series chart, it didn't really know how to use that because if the data type is not the correct data type, all you have to do is you can go ahead and cast this as a date, and that should solve all of our troubles. All right, so once we have done that, I do see that messed it up on the, another live update here, guys. So I've used a small y, and small y essentially goes ahead and just keeps two of the last two of the four digits in a year. So if it's 2023, it only keeps this 23. So let's go ahead and fix that. So in order to fix that, I'm just going to change all of these into capital Y's. So I'll have all the four digits of the year. Once I have that, let me go run that again. Let me just go confirm that. Yeah, so I have 2023 as all four digits. Now, if I do a cast on top of this, this should work fine. All right, and then I go ahead and see that. I'm just gonna go and name this. I'm just gonna call it date. Can't think of anything better right now. I'm gonna run that query again, and I should go and see all of the date, but with the correct data type. And I can go and verify that this is the correct data type just by doing a type of on top of it. And it shows me it's the correct data type. So this is, I mean, I'm glad that this happened because this gives you an idea about if you're having the same errors where you're not able to see your date time column inside your time chart, most likely there's something wrong with the data types, and you want to be able to go back and look at the data type uh, for the date time column and go ahead and fix that. So now that we have done that, I'm going to go ahead and save this data set. I'm just going to create a new data set. I can override it as well. I'm just going to create a new data set. I'm going to call this sleep and activity 2. And let's go back out of it again. Let's confirm the data set has been created. It has. I'm going to go into charts and we're going to try doing the exact same thing and see if it works. So I'm going to go with mixed time series charts. I'm going to go with sleep and activity 2. I'm going to go ahead and create a new chart. Again, the same thing that we saw before. Efficiency is going to go into query 1. And active calories or activity calories are going to go into query B. And now if you go and look at your time column, the date field is automatically being picked because we just went ahead and fixed the data type for it from a bar card to a date time data type. And so now Superset knows that that's the actual time variable on the x-axis. Let's go ahead and create a chart and see what happens. It does take some time. All right, so it has created a chart, some chart, right? You can see two different measures on that chart, right? You see one variable, which is the efficiency. One variable, which is the active calories, and the other variable, which is the efficiency. But the axes are all messed up. It's really hard to read this and understand if there's any correlation between the sleep efficiency and the active calories burnt. So to do that, you can go into customize. And you can go ahead and go into a field called as y-axis and change that from primary to secondary. And the moment you do that, you have two axes now. You have a primary axis, which is showing you your sleep efficiency, and you have a secondary axis that is now going ahead and showing you your active calories. I'll do a little bit of housekeeping. I'm going to name the primary y-axis as sleep efficiency. And I'm going to go ahead and label the secondary y-axis as well as activity calories. All right, I'm going to go ahead and click on update chart right now so that the chart gets updated with those changes. And let's go ahead and name the x-axis as well. While we are at it, we can also enable markers. It just makes it easier to look at. And I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. And what that lets me do is when I go and mouse over them, it's easier for me to see the actual values as compared to just guessing where they are, especially if I have a lot of values in there. I'll also go ahead and do the exact same thing for the secondary axis, if we can find where that option is. And the other thing which I usually like to do is enable data zoom. So right now our data set is very small for this demo, but if you imagine looking at something like an intraday heart rate data, you have a heart rate value that's coming in maybe every 20 seconds. And so you want to be able to zoom in and out of the data set. When you want a big picture, you want to zoom out, and when you want a more drill down picture, you want to zoom in. So for you to be able to do that, you can enable data zoom. And that puts the slider at the bottom. It allows you to zoom and move and look at exactly the data window that you are interested in looking at. I can't think of anything else right now that we would like to do with the chart. I'm just going to go ahead and update the chart again. I will also add a dimension to this chart actually. And the reason I'm adding dimensions is because when we add this to our dashboard, I want to be able to filter it out on participants. So let's go ahead and add participants as a dimension. So let's see where that option is for me. As I see an option over here for dimensions, you can add anywhere you want. I'm going to add it over here. So this is going to be a dimensions for your primary access. And again, this is going to be very, very busy right now, but ignore it for a minute. When we go to a dashboard and start filtering them out, you can start filtering by each and every participant. I'm going to also go ahead and add a participant dimension to our query B or the secondary access. All right. Once this is all done, there is no way of easily reading this now. But when you go into a dashboard, you can use filters and easily start reading this. I'm going to go ahead and call this sleep and activity. I'm going to go ahead and save this. And let's take a look at charts and make sure it's there. So I see my sleep and activity and I see my sleep night chart. So I see those two charts that I would like to use from it. Let me see if I'm missing anything on my notes. I think we covered most of it. Let's go ahead and create a new dashboard for sleep now. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the dashboard. Again, if you run into this issue, just make sure your URL is correctly set up. And let's go and create a new dashboard. I'm going to call this as a sleep dashboard. And I'm going to add my sleep night chart to it. And I'm going to go ahead and create a new row. And I will also add a sleep and activity chart to it. So once I have added both of these charts, I'm going to go ahead and save this dashboard. I'll wait for it to update. And this is very confusing to see. So the reason I enabled dimensions and did not want to look at the whole population was because I wanted to filter it based on a particular participant. So let's go ahead and see how we can do that. So if you click on this tiny little arrow thing here, you get an option to add filters. So let's see how we can add filters. I click on add filters. You get different types of filters. For now, it's just going to be a value filter, but you can also add time range and numerical filters. I'm going to call it a participant filter. Let us call it participant, so it looks nice. And then the column that I want you, so you can pick a data set. So I'm going to go ahead and pick our sleep and activity data set, which we just used. And the column I want to use is participant. So let's go ahead and do all that. Let's go ahead and save it. And so a filter is going to be populated on the left-hand side. And I can go and pick from all the participants. So let's just go and pick a participant that we saw over here. So let's see, I want to think 52, but let's guess that. And once you go ahead and pick that particular participant up, you will see the filter change. And you're only seeing data for that one participant now for the data set sleep and activity, right? So you're seeing the average efficiency of sleep, and you're also seeing the activity calories for that particular day. Just by looking at this, there isn't really any correlation. This was again just purely for demo to show you how you can have multiple variables put together in a single data set and also filter it out based on the participants. We're going to try one more thing. So we're going to go into add and edit filters. We're going to go ahead and pick sleep night, which is the first graph that you saw. And we're going to pick participant identifier. We're going to hit that. And what this now does is that it applies the filter on both top and bottom. And so let me go ahead and pick a participant. Just give it a minute. And so now what you're seeing is that the same filter has been applied to multiple charts inside the same dashboard. And this is very useful when you have multiple variables and metrics for a particular participant that you want to look across. So you can look at the population, so you can have average graphs, and then you can have per participant graphs, and you can use filters to individually go ahead and look at them. I'm going to pause here for another minute just to make sure we don't have any questions, and then I'll proceed to the last bit that we have. No, not check my notes quickly to make sure I haven't forgotten to cover anything. You can also do histograms. I didn't really have a data set ready for that. Let me just see if I do. Unfortunately, I don't have a data set that can work on histograms. But you can also do histograms based on. So let's go and look at the same data set that we created, um, and look at see if we create a histogram, which is easier to see. So I'm going to go ahead and go and pick the sleep night data set. Go and create a new. And right now, I just want to create a histogram of the duration. So how long have people been sleeping at night in my particular cohort, right? So I can go and click on duration hours, which we created in our original data set. And that's all I need. I'm going to go ahead and create the chart. And I see that most people are sleeping between 6 to 8 and 8 to 10 hours. So they're really nice, well slept study group. I'm going to go ahead and create a dimension again for particular participants. And the reason I'm doing that is so I can show you how to do filtering when we add this to a dashboard. Let's go ahead and save this. Let's just call it sleep histogram. And what we can do is we can add this to the dashboard directly. So we don't have to go back and add and all of those things. I just say add to dashboard. That's a sleep dashboard. And they should have added to it. I know, Tina, I am jealous of them too. So let's go back to our dashboards and let's go and click on sleep. And you can see that the sleep histogram has now been added to it. I can just go to a little bit of housekeeping. I can go and expand this a little bit. I can go save it. And if this all should have worked right, you should be able to use the same filters on all three of them. So let's see if that actually worked. It looks like it did work. Fingers crossed. All right, there you go. So for this particular participant, and I'm seeing all the data for that participant. So I'm just looking at the sleep efficiency as it's changing across the whole study period. For them, it hasn't really changed much. I'm looking at the active calories as well as their sleep, and then I'm looking at their sleep histogram just to see what their majority sleep patterns look like. So they slept between 8 to 10 hours when I'm looking at this particular participant. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and get out of the dashboards. A few other things which I wanted to show as we are nearing the end of this webinar. I wanted to touch on how can you share these dashboards with other people inside CyVerse, how you can export the whole analysis that you have done and share with others, and where is all of this stored inside CyVerse. So I'm going to go ahead and click on sleep again. Let's just go and look at sleep. And I can go ahead and click on once it loads for me. Still working on it. Still working on it. Okay. I can go and click on share. And what that allows me to do is it gets a permalink to the clipboard. Now, remember, this is all still running inside CyVerse. So whoever you share this with needs to have a CyVerse account, and you need to create a Superset account for them. And you can go ahead and create a Superset account for them in list users and then assign them a role. I'm not going to go into that right now, since assigning permissions and creating users is a whole separate thing inside Superset. And this is a very small, very rare use case where you'll actually be sharing dashboards with people that you don't really trust, like public facing entities. So I'm going to go ahead and just open up another tab here. And it's not going to ask me to log into CyVerse because I'm already logged into CyVerse. I'm just going to click this. And this happens again. All you have to do is just go ahead and change your top level domain. And you can see that when they clicked on the link, it opens up the dashboard for them. So this is really good if you have students who are building these visualizations and writing analysis queries on SQL and want to show it to you. It's also very good if you have lab meetings where you directly just want to share a link and everybody can see the data when they're actually in the meetings. Or if you just have presentations and want to have a live link that shows all of your data, you can go ahead and do that. Again, they would need to have a CyVerse account to be able to access all of this information since it's running as a container inside CyVerse. Okay. With that being done, the last two things which I do want to cover is how do you actually export all of this? So you can export any dashboard as a zip file, and you can share that zip file with anyone. They don't have to be on CyVerse. They can have a Superset installation locally on their machine. They could be using any other commercial Superset installation, and you can share the zip file with them. Do remember that this zip file still connects to your data source, and whoever you share it with can run SQL queries on that data source. So you have to be very careful with whom you share it. The zip file, when you import, does require a password. I'm going to show you by importing an example zip file. So I go ahead and export a zip file. Let's export a zip file. You can go ahead and see it says dashboard export, and that's the zip file that has been exported. I'm going to quickly import a zip file that we have already made. So I'm going to just go off camera for a minute. Before that, let me actually show you how to do that. So you can click on this little icon here that says import dashboards. You can go ahead and select a file, and you can pick the zip file that you want to import, sorry. I'm going to go ahead and import one of the files. And the file that I'm importing is a dashboard that we made for one of our studies here at the UA. Okay. And with that, I'm importing the zip file. I've already picked that up. I click on import. Now it goes ahead and asks me for a password. And the password for datasets which are connected to your AWS Athena are the actual secret key. So the IAM secret key is what we use for this. I am going to quickly go off screen share again as I'm copy pasting that password in here. Open to questions if anybody has that while I'm doing this. Okay, let's go ahead and copy paste that. I know you guys can't see that. Okay, I'm going to go back and share this. So once you have copy pasted your password, you can go ahead and see that new dashboard has been created. It will also create a new data set connected to that dashboard. So you can see that new data set has been created automatically once I add my password into it. Going into a dashboard, this is just serves as a way of seeing what you can do with this data. This is again just a Fitbit data. For this particular study, we looked at the different activities and the account of the activities that the users were doing in this particular study. They were swimming, they were walking, horseback riding, and so on and so forth. We also did a quick dive into distribution of heart rate values for each of the activity types. So we looked at what activities, um, have a higher heart rate when individuals are doing it compared to what activities have a lower heart rate. So, for example, running, no surprise, shows a higher spread of heart rate values as compared to outdoor biking. For example, aerobic workout has a around 120 median heart rate. So you can go ahead and look at these things. HRV, we just looked at a bunch of different HRV metrics in this particular dashboard while we were studying that more deep as well as daily. So what I'm trying to get to this is that if you have a zip file that you've exported, other collaborators can easily import that. And you can just get started on the analysis without having to set anything up. So if you have a teammate who is doing the analysis, and if you have another teammate who is working on the visualizations portions, they can just exchange all of these files back and forth very easily. All right, so that concludes the exporting and the sharing portion of this. I do want to leave us with some interesting queries which I didn't cover here, partly because they're very big and I didn't want to spend too much time on them. These queries are available on GitHub. So for example, what this query is doing for Fitbit data is summarizing all the activities and the heart rate, average heart rate values associated with it for all the participants. So if I go and run this, you can see that you have all the activities that a particular participant performed and what the average heart rate during that was, the Fitbit device that they used if you have a study with multiple types of Fitbit devices. And then if you have intraday heart rate, this would be the total number of counts of intraday heart rate values in that particular data set. So you can go ahead and look at this and see if you have missing data just by looking at how much heart rate, intraday heart rate values you have been getting from these users. All right. I'm going to show one last thing, which is on my notes, and then we are done. So when I log out, everything you did right now is maintained persistently inside CyVerse. And I do want to give a big shout out to the CyVerse team who went ahead and implemented the SQLite the driver to run on the CyVerse file system. And so what that allows us to do is that the Superset container creates a new folder in your CyVerse data store called as Superset SQLite. And when you click on it, it creates a database file here for you. And as long as you have this database file inside your home directory, you can always come back to your analysis without losing any of your dashboards. So it's a way for your container to remain persistent even after you kill your CyVerse analysis. And what I like to do is I like to rename these files for individual analyses so I can keep hopping back and forth. We haven't added a variable inside the container yet that allows you to pick these database files, but that's something that's on the roadmap. Most likely by the end of next week, we'll have that as a variable to be able to pick that. But if I go ahead here and go and kill my analysis, it doesn't really matter as long as I can go and start this analysis, keep all the same fields like the secret key and the username and password. I should be able to drop right back into my superset like nothing happened. The other thing is you can also share these things with other users of CyVerse. So you can go ahead and share this particular file with them. And once you do that, all you have to also give them is the username, password, and the secret key, and they can start using your database files and the dashboards that you have built to start building on top of it. So that way you can start collaborating just by using these database files. I'm going to go back and hop into my newly created container, but it's still using all the old database files that were stored onto my data store. I'm going to log in again. And as I log in, you can see that everything is back to normal, like nothing happened. So I can go back and click on my sleep dashboards, and I can see that. So this way you can basically have your analysis saved and keep coming back to it any number of times you want, even if the container stops running. All right, with that, that's all I had right now, just a few links at the end. So as usual, big thank you to Care Evolution for letting us use their platform for actual ingestion of the sensor data into our sensor fabric. If you want to go and look at example SQL queries, you can go and look at this GitHub which we created that has all the queries from today, plus a lot more SQL queries around Fitbit data that you can go and look at and learn. We also have the container source code if you want to go and modify that or look at how it works. Uh, AWS Athena uses the Trino engine in the back, so you can look at the documentation for the Trino functions. And again, the the GitHub file for the Fitbit tables and fields can be found here where you can read up on the tables and fields. There's one link missing, which will be in the one that we will post on the CyVerse webinar website. And so one of our grad students here, Pal, he did a basics SQL workshop for the data labs, and I plan to include that link so that those who are not familiar with SQL can go and look at that first and then come back here and look at the queries that we ran and then have a better understanding of how to manipulate the data to create these analysis and visualizations. And with that, I know I kept you guys waiting for a long time. It's only like 4 people, all of them I know right now, so feel free to jump in if you guys have any questions.
Shravan, thank you so much. Are there questions? Feel free to unmute since it's a small group at this point. And you have done a fantastic job of being very thorough. Yeah, have some.
Yeah, I was when it actually broke for a minute with the date time, I was a bit concerned, but I think it kind of panned out well that you were able to fix it quickly.
Right. Okay, I imagine that there'll be people watching on the video recording, but so thank you everyone for joining. Please be sure to mark your calendars for November 17th when Edwin Skidmore will present our CyVerse Cacao Cloud Native Automation Orchestration platform and how to create various templates for that. If there's no other questions, you got some claps and thanks. And our thanks, Shravan, very much. So see everybody next month. Bye now.
Okay.
Thanks. Bye.